The starship Horizon hung in the inky blackness of space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the viewscreen before her. The massive alien vessel that had appeared at the edge of the solar system dwarfed the horizon, its crystalline structure unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. "Any response to our hails, Lieutenant Chen?" Reyes asked, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her gut. Chen shook his head, his fingers dancing over the communications console. "Nothing, Captain. They're receiving our transmissions, but they're not." "Wait." His eyes widened as a new signal flashed across his screen. "Incoming transmission." The view screen flickered, and a figure appeared. It was vaguely humanoid, but that's where the similarities ended. The alien's body was covered in iridescent scales, its elongated head crowned with elaborate tendrils that seemed to move of their own accord. 4 black eyes, devoid of pupils, stared unblinkingly at the bridge crew. "Greetings, beings of Earth." The alien spoke, its voice a melodious hum that seemed to resonate within their skulls. "We are the Zorthak, masters of 1,000 worlds. We have come to assess your species and determine your place in the galactic order." Reyes stepped forward, her chin held high. "I am Captain Alina Reyes of the United Earth Alliance. We welcome you to our system and hope for peaceful dialogue between our peoples." The Zorthak's tendrils writhed, and a sound like tinkling crystal filled the air. Laughter, Reyes realized with a chill. Peaceful dialogue. How quaint. You are children playing at civilization, barely out of your cradle. We have watched your kind stumble and crawl across the stars, and we find you wanting. Reyes felt her jaw clench, but she maintained her composure. "With respect, you know nothing about us or what we're capable of. We may be new to interstellar travel, but we have overcome great challenges to reach this point." "Challenges?" The alien's voice dripped with condescension. "You have yet to face true trials. Your species is soft, ill-equipped for the harsh realities of the cosmos. But fear not, little ones. The Zorthak are benevolent. We will guide you, shape you into something useful." A low murmur ran through the bridge crew. Reyes could feel their anger, their indignation, but she held up a hand for silence. "We appreciate your offer, but humanity charts its own course. We're not looking for masters or guides. We seek allies and equals." The Zorthak's tendrils stopped moving, its black eyes narrowing. "You misunderstand, Captain Reyes. This is not an offer. It is the natural order of things. The strong shepherd the weak. You will submit, or you will be deemed unnecessary." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Reyes turned to her crew, seeing the mix of fear and determination on their faces. "Send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "We may have a problem." In the days that followed, diplomats and military leaders from Earth scrambled to negotiate with the Zorthak. But with each interaction, it became clearer that the aliens viewed humanity as little more than animals, primitives to be domesticated or exterminated at their whim. Dr. Amelia Frost, Earth's leading xenobiologist, pored over the scans they'd managed to take of the Zorthak ship. "Their technology is centuries beyond ours," she reported to the Emergency Council. "But there's something odd about their biology. They seem to have engineered themselves to thrive in space, but at a cost. They're hypersensitive to certain wavelengths of radiation, and their immune systems are, well, frankly, they're terrible." General Marcus Stone, a grizzled veteran of the Mars Rebellion, leaned forward. "Are you saying they're vulnerable?" Frost nodded slowly. "Potentially, but we'd need more data, more time to study them." "Time we may not have," Captain Reyes interjected. She'd been recalled to Earth for the emergency sessions. "Their patience is wearing thin. They view our attempts at diplomacy as weakness, our pleas for peace as submission." The council chamber erupted into arguments, fear and anger battling for supremacy. It was President Adira Okafor who finally silenced the room, her commanding presence drawing all eyes. "We stand at a crossroads. Okafor began, her voice resonating with quiet strength. For centuries, we dreamed of first contact, of joining a galactic community. But not like this. Not as servants or pets. She looked around the room, meeting each person's gaze. The Zorthak believe us to be prey, easy pickings in a harsh universe. It's time we showed them that Earth breeds predators, not prey. A chorus of agreement filled the chamber. Plans were drawn up, resources mobilized. Humanity would not go quietly into subjugation. They would stand and fight if necessary, drawing upon the same tenacity and ingenuity that had taken them from cave-dwellers to starfarers. As the council adjourned, Captain Rice found herself standing beside Dr. Frost, both women gazing out at the night sky where the Zorthak ship loomed, a silent threat. "Do you think we have a chance?" Frost asked quietly. Rice was silent for a long moment before answering. "The Zorthak made one crucial mistake," she said finally. "They assumed that because we're young, we're weak. They forgot that youth also means hunger, adaptability, the willingness to risk everything for a chance at survival." She turned to Frost, a fierce light in her eyes. "We've spent our entire history fighting. Against nature, against each other, against our own limitations. Now we have a new enemy, and we'll do what we've always done." "And what's that?" Frost asked. Rice smiled, a predator's grin in the starlight. "We'll evolve, we'll adapt, and we'll win." As if in response to her words, a shooting star blazed across the sky, a silent promise of the battle to come, and the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to be prey. The invasion begins. The attack came without warning. Alarms blared across the Martian colony of New Airs, jerking colonist Jake Martinez from his sleep. He stumbled to the window of his HAB unit, eyes widening at the sight that greeted him. The dome that protected the colony from Mars' harsh atmosphere was flickering, its energy field wavering under some unseen assault. "This is not a drill," a voice crackled over the emergency comm system. "All colonists report to emergency shelters immediately." "This is not." The message cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Jake's training kicked in. As head of the colony's hydroponics division, he had a responsibility to his team and to the vital food supplies they maintained. He threw on his environment suit and raced out into the chaos. The streets of New Airs were filled with panicked colonists rushing towards the underground shelters. Above them, through the failing dome, Jake could see flashes of light, weapons fire, a massive ship, all crystalline angles and pulsing energy, loomed over the colony. The Zorthak, Jake breathed, recognizing the alien vessel from news reports. But this wasn't supposed to happen. There were negotiations, talks of peace. Unless a deafening crack split the air as a section of the dome shattered. Warning klaxons screamed as the atmosphere began to vent. Jake felt the pull as the air rushed past him, but his mag boots kept him anchored to the ground. Others weren't so lucky. He watched in horror as colonists were swept off their feet, tumbling towards the breach. Without thinking, Jake lunged for the nearest person, a young woman whose tether had snapped. He caught her arm, the servos in his suit whining as he fought against the escaping atmosphere. With a grunt of effort, he swung her towards a nearby emergency seal foam dispenser. The woman understood immediately, grabbing the device and firing it at the breach. The foam expanded rapidly, stemming the flow of air. But it was a temporary fix at best. All around them, more breaches were opening as the Zorthak rained destruction upon the dome. "We need to get to the shelters," Jake shouted over the din, helping the woman to her feet. She shook her head, eyes wild with fear and determination. "The hydroponics labs. If we lose them, the colony dies even if we survive this attack." Jake stared at her for a moment before nodding. She was right. "I'm Jake, hydroponics chief," he said as they started running towards the labs. "Zara," she replied. "Atmospheric systems engineer. Pleased to meet you, all things considered." They reached the hydroponics sector to find it in disarray. Part of the roof had caved in, exposing the delicate ecosystem to the toxic Martian atmosphere. Jake's team was already there, working frantically to save what they could. "Seal off the unbreached sections," Jake ordered, falling easily into command. "We need to preserve as much as possible. Zara, can you help stabilize the atmospheric controls?" For hours, they worked tirelessly, fighting against time and the ongoing bombardment. The Zorthak seemed intent on destroying everything, but focused primarily on military targets and communication arrays. It was as if they wanted to cripple the colony, not annihilate it entirely. Finally, a tense silence fell. The attacks stopped as suddenly as they had begun. Jake and his team emerged from the hydroponics lab to survey the damage. New Ares was in ruins. The once pristine dome was now a patchwork of emergency sealant and twisted metal. But they had survived. A crackling transmission came through on all frequencies. The melodious, unsettling voice of a Zorthak filled the air. "Humans of Mars, you have experienced but a fraction of our power. Your militaries lie broken, your cities in ruins, but we are not without mercy. Submit to Zorthak rule, and you may yet have a place in our grand design." Jake looked at Zara, saw the same defiance in her eyes that he felt in his heart. All around them, colonists were emerging from shelters, dazed but alive. Already, he could see them beginning to organize, to assess damages, to plan repairs. "Like hell we will," someone shouted, the sentiment quickly echoed by others. The voice continued, oblivious or uncaring of their reaction. "You have 48 of your Earth hours to surrender. After that, we will assume your silence is a declaration of war. Choose wisely, little ones. The galaxy is a harsh place for prey that does not know its place." As the transmission ended, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Dr. Emer Patel, the colony's chief scientist, his face grim but determined. "They hit us hard," Emer said, "but they don't understand who they're dealing with. Humanity didn't come to Mars because it was easy. We came because it was hard, because we relish a challenge." He gestured at the colonists already hard at work on repairs. "We've been preparing for disaster since we first set foot on this planet. The Zorthak think they've crippled us, but all they've done is anger us." Jake nodded, feeling a surge of pride for his fellow colonists, for humanity as a whole. "So what do we do now?" Emir's eyes gleamed with a fierce light. "Now, we do what humans have always done when backed into a corner. We fight back, and we start by figuring out why they're so interested in Mars. There's something here they want, something they fear, and we're going to find out what it is." As the sun set on a battered but unbroken New Ares, Jake realized that the real battle was just beginning. The Zorthak had made a grave miscalculation. They thought their superior technology and biology made them the apex predators of the galaxy. But they had never faced anything like humanity before. In their complacency, they had forgotten a crucial truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one fighting for survival. Jake looked up at the sky, where Earth shone as a bright blue dot. Whatever was coming, whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would rage against the dying of the light. And in doing so, they would show the galaxy that Earth bred predators, not prey. The invasion had begun, but so too had the resistance. And Jake Martinez, like millions of humans across the solar system, was ready to bare his teeth and fight. The turning point. Dr. Amelia Frost wiped the sweat from her brow, her eyes never leaving the holographic display before her. The makeshift lab, buried deep within the ruins of the Luna base, hummed with activity as scientists and soldiers worked side by side, united in their desperate search for a way to turn the tide against the Zorthak. 6 months had passed since the initial invasion. Earth's forces, though outnumbered and outgunned, had managed to hold their own through sheer tenacity and ingenuity. But they were losing ground, slowly but surely. The Zorthak's technological superiority was grinding humanity down, one battle at a time. "Dr. Frost," a voice called out. She turned to see Captain Alina Reyes entering the lab, her once pristine uniform, now battle-worn and patched. "Please tell me you have good news. We just lost contact with the Jupiter outpost." Amelia's heart sank at the news, but she steeled herself. "We might have something, Captain. It's not much, but it's the best lead we've had so far." She gestured to the hologram, which showed a complex molecular structure. "This is a breakdown of the Zorthak biology, based on tissue samples we've managed to collect." Ray studied the display, her brow furrowed. "I'm afraid xenobiology isn't my strong suit, Doctor. What am I looking at?" "The key to beating them," Amelia said, a fierce light in her eyes. "Remember how I said their immune systems were terrible? Well, it's worse than we thought. The Zorthak have engineered themselves to thrive in space, but in doing so, they've made themselves vulnerable to something we consider harmless." She tapped a command, and the hologram zoomed in on a particular section of the molecular structure. "This is their equivalent of a T-cell, but it's fundamentally different from ours. It's hyper-specialized, incredibly efficient at dealing with the types of pathogens you'd encounter in a sterile spaceship environment. But expose it to something more terrestrial, and it goes haywire." Ray's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Are you saying we can make them sick?" Amelia nodded, barely containing her excitement. "Not just sick, Captain. We can devastate them. Their immune response to common Earth bacteria is so severe it could kill them within hours. They're not invulnerable aliens. They're bubble boys with delusions of grandeur." For the first time in months, Reyes allowed herself a smile. "So how do we weaponize this?" "That's where it gets tricky," Amelia admitted. "We can't just toss petri dishes at their ships. We need a delivery system, something that can penetrate their defenses and expose them directly." A new voice joined the conversation. "I think I might have a solution for that." They turned to see Jake Martins, the hydroponics specialist from Mars, entering the lab. Despite the grim situation, he managed a wry smile. "Sorry for the intrusion. Your guards are a bit preoccupied with the firefight outside." Rice tensed, her hand moving to her sidearm, but Amelia waved her off. "It's okay. I know him. Jake, how did you get here?" "Last I heard, Mars was under siege." Jake's smile faded. "It was. We managed to break out, but at a cost. Most of New Eras is gone, but we didn't leave empty-handed." He pulled out a small crystalline device from his pocket. "We found out why the Zorthak were so interested in Mars. There's something in the soil, some kind of ancient bacteria. They were terrified of it." Amelia's eyes lit up as she took the device, immediately beginning to scan it. "This is incredible, Jake. With this, we might be able to synthesize a delivery system that the Zorthak won't detect until it's too late." Rise looked between the two scientists, hope warring with caution in her expression. "How long? How long until we can turn this into a weapon we can use?" Amelia and Jake shared a look, years of scientific training allowing them to communicate volumes in a glance. "A week," Amelia said finally. "Maybe less if we push ourselves." "You have 3 days," Rise said, her voice brooking no argument. "The Zorthak are planning something big. We've detected massive fleet movements near Saturn. Whatever they're up to, it's endgame." A distant explosion rocked the lab, dust falling from the ceiling. The battle was getting closer. 3 days it is," Jake said, already rolling up his sleeves. "We'll make it work." Amelia nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "We'll need to coordinate with engineering, weapons development, and we'll need test subjects." "Leave that to me," Rice said grimly. "You focus on making the weapon. I'll make sure you have everything you need." As Rice turned to leave, Amelia called out to her. "Captain, when this is over, what then? If this works, we'll be committing xenocide." Rice paused at the door, her shoulders sagging for just a moment before she straightened, every inch the soldier. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Doctor." Right now, our job is to ensure there's a humanity left to feel guilty about it. 3 days. Make them count. With that, she was gone, leaving Amelia and Jake to their monumental task. As they began to work, the sounds of battle drawing ever closer, Amelia couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. The Zorthak had come to Earth expecting to find prey, easy pickings for their advanced civilization. Instead, they had awoken a sleeping giant, a species that had clawed its way to sapience through millions of years of brutal evolution. The Zorthak thought themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson, one written in the very DNA of every human. When pushed to the brink, when faced with extinction, humanity didn't cower. It bore its teeth, it adapted, and it fought back with every ounce of its being. As Amelia looked at the bacterial samples that might hold the key to humanity's survival, she felt a chill run down her spine. They were about to turn the tables on the Zorthak in the most poetic way possible, by weaponizing the very planet the aliens had sought to conquer. Earth, it seemed, had bred not just predators, but the ultimate weapon against its would-be conquerors. The next 3 days would determine whether it would be enough. Counterattack. The bridge of the UES Defiant thrummed with tension as Captain Alina Reyes studied the holographic display before her. The massive Zorthak fleet hung in space around Saturn, their crystalline ships glittering against the gas giant's rings. It was a sight that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. Status report. Reyes barked, her eyes never leaving the display. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across his console. All ships report ready, Captain. Dr. Frost's weapon has been distributed to the entire fleet. We're as prepared as we're going to be. Reyes nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Let's hope it's enough. What's the status of Operation Trojan Horse? The bait ship is in position, Chen replied. Life signs are stable. They're ready on your command. Reyes took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. The plan was audacious, borderline insane, but it was the best chance they had. She opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Reyes to all ships. You know what's at stake here. The Zorthak came to our system expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they found us. Today, we show them exactly what that means. Today, we fight not just for our survival, but for our right to exist as we are. Free, unbroken, human. She paused, letting her words sink in. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. Good hunting and Godspeed. The comm channel erupted with acknowledgments as the fleet sprang into action. At the center of their formation, a single ship began to move towards the Zorthak fleet. It was an old freighter repurposed for this mission, its hull scarred and battered. To the Zorthak sensors, it would appear to be a refugee ship, packed with human civilians fleeing the war. In reality, it carried a very different cargo. Aboard the bait ship, Jake Martinez checked his environment suit one last time. Around him, 24 of Earth's best soldiers did the same, their faces a mix of determination and barely concealed fear. They all knew this was likely a one-way trip. Remember, Jake said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Once we're aboard their ship, we'll only have minutes before their internal sensors detect the bacteria. We have to reach their life support systems and release Dr. Frost's weapon before that happens. The soldiers nodded, their training kicking in as they prepared for the fight of their lives. Jake felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Zara, the atmospheric engineer from Mars, giving him a reassuring smile. We've got this, she said softly. Earth's counting on us. Jake nodded, grateful for her presence. As the only civilians on this mission, they had a unique responsibility. Their scientific knowledge would be crucial in navigating the alien ship and deploying the weapon effectively. A shudder ran through the ship as the Zorthak tractor beam locked on. Right on schedule, Jake thought. He gave the signal, and everyone took their positions. Back on the Defiant, Rise watched as the bait ship was drawn into the massive Zorthak vessel. "Come on," she muttered under her breath. "Take the bait." For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the Zorthak ships began to move, breaking formation as they turned their attention to the small human vessel they had captured. "Now," Rise shouted, "all ships, engage." The human fleet burst into action, their engines flaring as they charged towards the now disorganized Zorthak formation. The space around Saturn erupted into chaos as energy weapons and missiles crisscrossed the void. Inside the Zorthak ship, alarms blared as the human assault team burst from their hiding places. Jake and Zara raced through alien corridors, following the map they had painstakingly pieced together from reconnaissance data. "Left here," Zara called out, gesturing towards a junction. "Life support should be 2 levels down." They encountered surprisingly little resistance at first. The Zorthak, overconfident in their technological superiority, had never expected a direct infiltration. But as they neared their target, they began to meet stiffer opposition. Energy bolts sizzled past Jake's head as he dove for cover. The soldiers returned fire, their weapons modified to penetrate Zorthak personal shields. Jake watched in a mix of awe and horror as the aliens fell, their bodies dissolving into crystalline dust upon death. "We're running out of time," he shouted over the din of battle. "Their internal defenses are adapting." As if to punctuate his words, a section of the wall suddenly liquefied, forming into spike-like protrusions that began to close in on them. The Zorthak ship itself was fighting back. "Go!" one of the soldiers yelled, tossing Jake a small cylindrical device. "We'll hold them off. Get that weapon to life support." Jake hesitated for a split second before nodding. He and Zara sprinted down the corridor, the sounds of battle fading behind them. They reached the life support chamber, a vast room filled with pulsating crystalline structures. "There," Zara pointed to a central column. "That's got to be the main air circulation unit." Jake didn't hesitate. He raced to the column and attached the cylinder containing Dr. Frost's weaponized bacteria. With shaking hands, he input the activation code. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a fine mist began to spray from the device, quickly being drawn into the ship's air circulation. "We did it," Jake breathed, hardly daring to believe it. But their victory was short-lived. The ship shuddered violently, and the air began to shimmer with an eerie, otherworldly light. "They're trying to purge the atmosphere," Zara shouted. "We need to get out of here." They ran for the exit, but the corridors were already beginning to seal themselves off, the ship's automated defenses working to contain the contamination. They were trapped. Outside, the battle raged on. The human fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that caught the Zorthak off guard. Ships on both sides exploded in silent bursts of fire and debris. On the Defiance Bridge, Rise gripped her command chair as the ship rocked from a near miss. Status of the Zorthak flagship. Chen studied his readings, his eyes widening. "Captain, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations. Their life support systems are going haywire." I think it worked." A cheer went up on the bridge, quickly silenced as Rise raised her hand. "What about our infiltration team?" Chen's face fell. "No sign of them, Captain. The Zorthak ship's hull is still intact. If they're still in there." Rise closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief second of grief for the brave souls they had sent on this suicide mission. Then she steeled herself. There would be time for mourning later. "Target that ship," she ordered, her voice cold. "Hit it with everything we've got. Let's make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain." As the Defiant and its sister ships concentrated their fire on the Zorthak flagship, Rise couldn't help but reflect on the terrible cost of this war. They had been pushed to the brink, forced to weaponize a fundamental aspect of their own world against their enemies. But in doing so, they had proven something not just to the Zorthak, but to themselves. Humanity was not prey to be hunted or cattle to be herded. They were survivors, adaptable and fierce. They were predators in their own right, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the Zorthak flagship finally succumbed to the combined assault of the human fleet and the biological weapon within, Rise allowed herself a grim smile. The tide had turned. The hunt was on. And this time, humanity was the hunter. Victory and reflection. The observation deck of the United Earth Alliance headquarters was silent as President Adira Okafor gazed out at the rebuilt skyline of New Geneva. It had been 2 years since the fall of the Zorthak Empire. 2 years of rebuilding, of healing, and of coming to terms with what humanity had become in order to survive. The door slid open behind her, and she turned to see Admiral now, Alina Rise entering, followed by Dr. Amelia Frost and the unlikely heroes of Mars, Jake Martinez and Zara Noor. "Madam President," Rise said, snapping a crisp salute. "You wanted to see us." Okafor nodded, gesturing for them to join her by the window. "I thought it fitting that we should all be here for this moment." She pressed a button on her wrist device, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing a star map of the known galaxy. The last Zorthak holdout has fallen. As of 600 hours this morning, the war is officially over. A collective exhale seemed to go through the room, years of tension finally releasing. Jake and Zara embraced, tears in their eyes. They had survived the destruction of the Zorthak flagship by a miracle, rescued at the last moment by a daring extraction team. Their survival had become a symbol of hope for a battered humanity. "We did it," Amelia breathed, her voice a mix of relief and lingering disbelief. "We actually did it." "Yes," Okafor said, her tone somber. "But at what cost?" The mood in the room sobered immediately. They all knew the price of their victory. Billions dead, entire colonies reduced to ash, and the deployment of a weapon that had effectively committed genocide against the Zorthak. "We did what we had to do," Rise said, her voice firm but her eyes betraying the weight of her actions. "They gave us no choice." Okafor nodded slowly. "I know, and history will judge us for it. But that's not why I called you here." She expanded the holographic display, zooming in on a sector of space far from Earth. "We've been receiving transmissions from other alien civilizations. Word of our victory has spread." Jake leaned in, studying the display. "Are they friendly?" "Cautiously so," Okafor replied. "The Zorthak, it seems, were not popular among their neighbors. Many of these civilizations were under their heel, much as we nearly were. They view us as liberators. And as a potential threat," Amelia added, always quick to see the broader implications. Okafor nodded. "Precisely. We've been invited to send representatives to a galactic council. They're curious about us, and more than a little wary. We're no longer seen as prey species to be conquered. Now, we're the newcomers who took down the biggest predator in the cosmic jungle." Rhea's expression hardened. "If they're looking for a fight." "No," Okafor cut her off gently. "That's exactly what we need to avoid. We've proven we can fight when we must, but now we need to prove we can coexist peacefully, that we're more than just the weapon we created to survive." Zara spoke up, her voice thoughtful. "We could share our terraforming technology. What we learned on Mars could help countless worlds." Jake nodded enthusiastically. "And our adaptability, our problem-solving skills. We might be newcomers to the galactic stage, but we've got plenty to offer." Amelia's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. "The potential for knowledge exchange alone is staggering. Think of what we could learn, how we could grow." Okafor smiled, heartened by their responses. "That's exactly the attitude we need. We've shown the galaxy that we're not prey, that we can't be conquered or subjugated. Now we need to show them that we're not mindless predators either. That we can be partners, allies, friends." She turned back to the window, gazing up at the stars that now held so much more promise and peril than ever before. "We're entering a new era for humanity. We'll face challenges we can't even imagine yet. But if there's one thing this war has taught us, It's that we can adapt, we can overcome, we can evolve. Ray stepped up beside her, her posture straight and proud. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Not just as a species, but as part of a larger galactic community. But we'll never forget, Jake added softly, what it took to get here, what we had to become. Okafor nodded solemnly. No, we won't forget. The Zorthak thought they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They thought they could treat other species as prey, as resources to be used and discarded. We proved them wrong, but in doing so, we've taken on a great responsibility. She turned to face the group, her expression resolute. We must be better than they were. We must use our strength, our adaptability, our fierce will to survive, not to dominate, but to protect, to uplift, to explore and to learn, to ensure that no species ever has to make the choices we did, Amelia said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly, Okafor confirmed. Earth breeds predators, not prey. But we get to choose what kind of predators we will.